welcome everyone here to the Planning Application Committee today on the 9th of March. And we'll go through the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Chair, we still haven't got Councillor Thomas, as you just said, but we have had apologies from Councillor Viv Thomas. We've also had apologies from Councillor Bogeline, and we have Councillor Carlo as her substitute today.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, anyone? No? Oh yes, Councillor Lovett.
Yes, in item 4C.
Yep.
6 Norwich Drive.
You'll be speaking and then leaving the meeting, I gather?
Correct.
Thank you.
So, sorry, just for clarification, that's a predetermined view because you...
Thank you very much. Minutes of the last meeting. Do we agree they're correct record? Thank you. Now move on to the planning applications, and now we will take them in order. And if we can ask our planning officer to go through the first one, which is 308 Beaufort Mill. This is the one we referred back last time. Thank you. Steve.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm presenting to you an application here for the change of use of 308 Beaufort Road from a Class EA retail use to a sui generis hot food takeaway. The proposal also includes the installation of extraction equipment. So, as the Chair mentioned, this application was presented to you at the previous meeting. The decision was deferred to allow the County Council's Transportation Officer to carry out a more detailed survey of the site. He has provided comments following a visit that was completed the day after the previous meeting. Those comments have been included in full at the rear of the report. Just to go over the application again, the site location plan here shows the site. The building itself is located on the eastern extent of the site. It's a recently constructed extension to an existing retail unit located to the front of the site. The site also includes a residential element to the rear of the site. The site is located on Beaufort Road, at junction with Field View, which is a predominantly residential cul-de-sac. The nearest neighbouring properties are number 1 Field View to the rear and number 11 Field View on the opposite side of the entrance to the cul-de-sac. The proposed, or these rather, are the existing plans, which shows the extent of the existing retail unit, which has been recently expanded in recent years rather. The site specifically relates to the extended part, which is a standalone retail unit that has been vacant since its construction a few years ago. The proposed plans indicate the precise amount of floor space involved, which would create hot food takeaway floor space at ground floor level, which is essentially a kitchen and a serving area. There's also storage at first floor level. The proposed plans also indicate the siting of the extraction flue, which would project approximately 1.1 metres beyond the ridge of the roof. And there's a more detailed floor plan that indicates the layout of the proposed hot food takeaway. It would also include a toilet for use by the staff there. It also indicates where a bin would be stored directly to the rear, which would be accessible via its own door to the rear. It would be the shop front, as is existing, would remain to the front. Just an elevation drawing that shows in more detail the position of the extraction equipment and the cowl that would exit the roof close to the ridge of the building. We have assessed this against the relevant policy. In terms of design, we acknowledge that the most significant change would be the extraction flue. We do acknowledge that this would result in a change in the current situation. However, given that this is not a particularly sensitive location and there are examples of similar equipment located within there, we don't consider that it's particularly harmful to the character and appearance of the site or of the wider street scene. In terms of the use, the shopfront would remain intact, so there wouldn't be any other significant noticeable changes to the appearance of the site or the character of the area. In terms of residential immunity, we have consulted the Council's Environmental Protection Officer with regard to the use. They have provided a condition that they recommend we impose, should this be approved, that relates to the use of the equipment to make sure that it is used in accordance with the details that we've received. They didn't raise an objection with regard to noise or odour, so we're satisfied that this wouldn't cause harm in that respect to the nearest neighbouring occupiers. In terms of other considerations, there has been a focus on the transportation issues, which I will move on into just a moment, just to set the scene. Again, this is the view of the front elevation, so this is the existing unit. As you can see, it's currently vacant, as it has been since its construction, and this is just the beginning of the adjoining shop unit. This is the entrance to the cul-de-sac field view. Just a slightly wider view of the front elevation that shows Beaufort Road looking towards the city. You will note that there's a wide area of pavement here, and roughly where the pointer is now, that indicates the beginning of an existing drop curb that provides access to the front of the site. This is the view looking down towards field view, so this shows the side elevation of the unit and the frontage there. A view now from the other side of field view looking up towards Beaufort Road. This shows you an existing parking area that is shared by all of the uses at 308 Beaufort Road, so the residential uses to the rear, the shop use and the proposed use on the side. This is just a wider view looking from field view back towards Beaufort Road, and this is a view looking away from the city on Beaufort Road, which shows you the nearest neighbouring comparable business, which is a fish and chip takeaway business a couple of doors along. This is the application site number 11 field view, and the fish and chip shop with its extraction cowl and projecting to the side of the building. So this is an image that's been added from to the presentation following from the last meeting, which is lifted from Street View, which is there to show you the position of the existing drop curb that serves the site. Leads on therefore to the transportation issue. So there have been 4 objections received. There was a focus on transportation issues. So there is, we've been informed that there are existing issues with relation to parking and access caused by the use of the use of the site by the existing business in particular. So the transportation officer carried out a thorough site visit. He took measurements and so on, and has provided comments to that effect. In terms of his overall appraisal, he hasn't raised an objection to the use, the proposed use. He has made one recommendation that we have included as recommended condition, which is to paint the white H-bar directly in front of the existing drop curb. And that is in an attempt to make sure that access to the site is not blocked by people using the site or parking on the pavement there. In terms of considering modifications to the site to improve access, the transportation officer concluded that there wasn't any sufficient space to create another access or an exit from the site. So the idea of a kind of horseshoe entrance-exit system was considered. The only position where that would have potentially been possible would have been on the field view exit of the site, side of the site, but as you can see from the photographs, there's insufficient space, and in terms of highway safety, it would be too close to the junction of Fieldview and Beaufort Road for that to be safely implemented. So there are no other modifications that are possible to the site in terms of highway safety to improve the situation. In terms of the assessment of the impact of the proposed use, it's very much worth stressing that the existing use benefits from what is an EA use class, which is a retail use class. And there are a myriad of different uses that could commence without needing any extra permission. So there's an extant permission that allows for uses. And those uses could include things, for example, a sandwich takeaway shop that could open with unrestricted hours and could have a takeaway facility. It could be an off license, for example. It could be a cafe, it could be a restaurant. There's numerous uses that could commence that are permitted to commence without needing any further form of application by using the existing permission. So the view that we have therefore taken, and the transportation officer from the county has also taken, is that there would be only a very limited difference in terms of the possible uses that could commence using the existing permission and the proposed use as a hot food takeaway. The one point that our transportation officer has noted is that the hot food takeaway would be likely to operate in hours later into the day. So the permission would allow for the hot food takeaway to open between the hours of 11 in the morning and 11 in the evening. So there's an assumption, therefore, that business at hot food takeaway would take place in hours outside of typical trading hours, so that's to say after the hours of 5 p.m. up to its closing time. In terms of the impact of that on the highway safety of the area, the transportation officer concluded that that is not of a significant concern, because those are predominantly outside of the peak traffic hours within the area, and therefore the proposed change of use would not significantly impact on the highway safety or functioning of the area. On that basis, therefore, there was no objection raised. In terms of improving the proposal or the situation, there are other minor modifications, so we would request by condition that cycle parking is provided on site, and we would also request that a litter bin is provided on site, because we have noted that there is not one within close proximity of the site that is available for use by future customers. On that basis, we recommend that the application is approved.
Thank you, Steve, for that. Any questions to the officer, Councillor Chairman?
Chair, we've got a speaker.
Oh yes, sorry, you have to wait. Yeah. We have got one speaker, and it's Mr. Gerald Brown. Thank you. And Gerald, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I suspect the councillors will not have looked in any detail at the longest list of prior approvals for this overall development, converting a small sub-post office, also selling newspapers, sweets and a small range of general goods, plus attached bungalow living accommodation, into a substantial retail development and a 6-bedroom HMO. I question if such an overall substantial change, if submitted as a single application, would have been waved through as these have been to date, without greater consideration of the overall effect of the development on the area. As it is, there have been numerous enforcement complaints as extra works to that initially approved have been constructed and then retrospective applications made. After the last approved application list, Graham Nelson upheld a stage 2 complaint against his department for agreeing an extra 10 metre square sales area in front of the building line and other noticeable visible changes from previous permissions without troubling with the nicety of any public consultation. I understand another enforcement complaint regarding further increasing sales area in front of the building line is presently under investigation. I note the officer thinks use of the hot food takeaway will be little different to the class use previously approved. Can councillors think of any retail outlet that is likely to generate as much traffic as a fast food takeaway? Is not the essence to get the product to the place of consumption as fast as possible before it cools, such that even quite local customers will tend to drive, to which needs to be added that many potential walking distance customers of this outlet are buried in the cemetery. driving customers certainly predominate at the nearby fish and chip shop. Since the last meeting, more vehicles associated with the development seem to be parking partially on the path of the field view, perhaps to help keep the understanded width road more accessible. The downside is that the local mobility scooter user recently had a near miss with a vehicle entering field view just as he took to the road to get past a vehicle parked on the path adjacent to the shop. It is disappointing that residents were not invited to the site meeting with the county transport official. I suspect they would have raised many points the officers may have overlooked. To attempt to deflect from the problems additional traffic was causing field view, as indicated at the previous committee meeting, I note the officer has now added Chelsea Lane as a suitable parking location for the development. People tend not to want to walk 10 yards to their car, let alone 100 yards. I rather suspect the councillors will rubber stamp this application, so I'd like to thank them in anticipation for reducing the quality of life for Fieldview residents, should they do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's no agent.
There's no agent here this time, so we'll straight on to questions to the officer, Councillor Champion.
The officers might want to respond.
No. Gary.
Good. Okay, so I just wanted to get a bit of clarity. With the new additional report from Council about road safety, so they've acknowledged there's one drop curve to allow entrance to the premises, but they're reluctant. They don't consider that an exit drop curve is acceptable, so it's too close to the junction. But we're aware that people are driving in on the drop curb and then exiting by going over the pavement. And so people are using they're driving over the pavement, which is in the same location that we wouldn't allow a drop curb, because the drop curb would be too close to the junction because it's not safe. And the other point which I was curious about was it was observed that most drivers mount the footway to avoid perceived obstruction of the carriageway, yet this does not cause disadvantage. Sorry, this does not cause disadvantage pedestrians, and that this was a commonplace issue across Norwich, and indeed nationally outside of Norwich. One of the issues I've got raised a lot by residents is their concern about blocked pavements, and that this is a huge issue across Norwich, and I feel like this report has not really dealt with it. So I guess my question is, why have are we expected to believe that people are going to drive in on a drop curb, turn around and leave by the same drop curb? Is that what we're being asked to believe, or are we being asked to believe that people are going to drive on and then drive over the pavement, and that's acceptable, except not acceptable for a drop curb? I'm just trying to get clarity in my mind on this issue. Thank you.
So I'll just refer to one of the photographs now. So so the existing drop curb is just about here, just out of shot. So you can see it's quite a wide footway here. And what's been observed is that vehicles will pull in and park here, and for example the owner of the existing retail business, that's where he'll park a van for deliveries to be unloaded. For example, typically I think the transportation officer has observed that people will then have the ability to exit from the same entrance, but it has been observed that people cross over onto field view. So there's not an expectation that people are manoeuvring, they're picking one or the other. And quite the level of exactly how that's happening is not known, because that would require a full-on study and so on. So in terms of what we want, in terms of the application of the proposal, we are considering the proposed change of use of the unit. So we're looking at the difference between the proposed use and the existing use. The issues that have been raised are existing issues, so we're not able to fix those issues by through the mechanism of determining this application. What the officer has recommended is the painting of a white H bar, which is a modification that can, in theory, improve the situation by making sure that the one access that is functioning relatively well is not impeded. So I think that's key with regards to this proposal. Is we're assessing the proposed change of use from a Class EA retail use to hot food takeaway use. We're not assessing or kind of passing judgment, if you like, on the existing use and the arrangements as to how that use is accessed.
Councillor Sands?
Wait, I think, wasn't there 2 questions from...
You're all right.
No? All right. Silly question. With the provision of cycle parking, I'm not sure what a Sheffield cycle park looks like, but could it be positioned in such a way as to stop cars from continuing around and going down off the curb on the field view?
So the provision of cycle parking is required by condition, so we would have to first consider those details before approving them. So the cycle parking would be required to be installed prior to the use commencing, and we would need details of that to be presented to us and approved, which would require consultation with the transportation officer again. So exactly where they would be sited is not known, and to answer, in terms of your specific question, it's I don't know if that would be an appropriate place or not at this stage.
That's conceivable though, isn't it?
Potentially, yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor Graham?
And then Councillor
Thank you.
Lovett.
My concern is about traffic too, and particularly about pedestrian safety. If there are cars going over that pavement, possibly reversing, turning around because there's only one way out. And particularly anybody with a sight impairment or some other disability, I think that they're quite at risk on the pavement from vehicles coming in and out and turning around. So I wonder if we have the option of restricting the hours that parking can happen in that bit, or restricting the hours that vehicles can drive over the pavement, because it just seems quite dangerous to me. That's not something we go to control, so it's a highways issue, so that's not something we could implement via the determination of this application.
Councillor Lovett?
Yes, I agree. Why we deferred it from last time was because we are concerned about the issues of road safety. And I just wondered, it's a shame we haven't got a photograph of the actual sort of curve to see how far the double yellow lines should we got anything?
This is showing yellow line at the junction of field view here. The street view can show you everything as well, and then this is a view lifted from street view, which shows the extent of the yellow line to the front, which I think is actually up to that point where the yellow mark is. So it doesn't extend particularly far around field view. It sort of roughly goes as far as the best view actually, yeah. So pretty much to the extent of the front of the application site.
And when you say that vehicles can use the drop curve, can they really turn around and come out in forward gear?
So what was observed, and I think what would typically happen is so if I return back to the street view image, what was observed is that a car driving towards the city would drive in a forward gear, stop in front of the shop, and then reverse back out and carry on in a forward gear that way. So it's not likely that a significant number of cars are able to turn within this space, because there's insufficient space, because you've got the trees on the site, the post box and some other street furniture, making that somewhat difficult.
And if there were two cars parked there, they couldn't do the reverse bit. So they're actually coming down over the curb, quite close to the W in the lines.
Yeah, I mean,
The pavement.
I think it's important to note that parking in this front space is not necessarily what's happening all the time. It is possible, excuse me, to park on the pavement along Beaufort Road and into Fieldview and potentially also on Gypsy Lane a bit further around the corner without that being a problem in terms of highway safety. And in terms of this section of footway, it is quite wide compared to some parts of pavement in the city. So, for example, we're referring to other parts of the city where this is a significant issue, perhaps a typical terrace street within Norwich. A car parking on the pavement will, of course, obstruct a significant amount of the pavement. Couple that with bins being left on the pavement, for example, and it's a very significant problem. I don't think this site has quite the same level of impact, given that there isn't a proliferation of residential uses directly adjacent to the footway, and also the pavement along this section is quite wide in terms of comparison with other areas of the city.
Yes, but it is a pedestrian, where pedestrians walk and suddenly having a vehicle backing out across the path that we walk along, coming off the driving straight over it in that way is a bit, is not ideal.
Is that why they've been doing that for the last 20 odd years, as far as I know? Reversing off. And that'll still be there if you turn this application down. They'll still be reversing off. Because the shop will still be open.
Yes, it's very much an existing arrangement, and as has been noted previously, the shop in any form has been there for a significant period of time. So the shop would have been constructed around the same time the houses in the early 20th century were built. So there would have been examples of parking on the footway or in front of the shop that's happened for decades.
Okay, any more questions to the planning officer? No? Okay, I'm going to move the recommendation. The recommendation is to approve. Have I got a second for that? Thank you. We move on to discussion. Anyone? Councillor Stutely first, and then Councillor Champion.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do still think there are some highways issues with this, but I was pleased that the officer had a look at it and he's put in some mitigation. I believe the H-bars painted on the road are advisory, but nevertheless it should put people off from parking there, and as a result less people will continue across the pathway onto Fieldview. And strategic placement of a bin and cycle parking could prevent that altogether. I think what's happened here is that we've been given little option, but certainly we can't vote against this now. I believe because of the excellent conditions and what's already in place won't change. My proposal, however, is to bring back the hours of opening to 10 o'clock. I'd like to put that forward as a proposal, if anyone would like to second it.
Thank you. Councillor Champion? Councillor Lovett, were you proposing? No? Yeah, Councillor Champion.
I agree. We've got our hands tied with this. I don't see how we can object to it as a development. It strikes me that the issues to do with highways are a wider issue, and I just want to put it on the record that the idea that we are allowing for pavement parking and the issues that we are not able to address in this committee are issues that we should be addressing as councillors in a broader context. And I feel that whilst this particular area has got wider pavements, I feel like there is too much leeway given to scenarios like this, and there should be far more consideration for pedestrians, those who, we've already heard today of an incident of somebody who was in a mobility scooter having a close call, and I feel like we, as councillors, got a responsibility whilst it's been noted this has been ongoing for decades, the amount of car use has increased exponentially, and I just want to have it known that I'm unhappy. I can't object to this, but I'm not a happy bunny. Thank you.
Councillor Lovett.
Yes, I agree with a lot of what Councillor Champion has said. I mean, we've heard from the speaker that this has been incremental, the increase in activity here, and with each application, nothing has been done to ensure that there's any road safety improvements. And I do agree we're in a different world today where we are encouraging walking and cycling, and to allow this sort of situation to exist isn't doing anything for road safety. And as planners, as I agree with Councillor Champion, we should put on record that we're not happy about this, but we're not the Highways Authority. It is the County Council who have given us their advice. And I do agree the H marked on the road is helpful, but it doesn't stop motorised vehicles crossing a pathway for pedestrians. And somewhere there should be more opportunities to put this right, rather than just allow an inadequate situation to continue. And yes, I've seen with my own eyes how quickly the drivers, whether they're cars or mopeds, when they're making deliveries, they make no concession for other vehicles, let alone pedestrians, in their rush to get to the pickup and get to the people who want the food. And I don't agree with limiting the hours, because for a takeaway, 10 is very early. And we've had one recently allowed by the licensing committee to 4 a.m. in the morning. So, you know, if that's where we're headed, I think 10 is very punitive for a hot food takeaway. So I'm unhappy with this, and I can't vote for it. I would rather abstain.
Okay, I've got three more councillors. Councillor Stootling's first.
And Councillor Peake.
Pardon?
He's already spoken. He's already spoken.
Yeah. Councillor Stootling.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Councillor Lovett makes a good point about the hours. I wasn't on the licensing committee that decided that other one. I was going to make a suggestion to members of the public that have come along, because City Council is not responsible for highways, it's a county issue, and most of the issues surrounding this site are related to highways. I was going to suggest that they get in touch with the county council. Councillor Riley, I think, is a councillor for this area, and see the campaign to make improvements there, because it is out of the remit of the City Council.
Councillor Young.
Yeah, I had two comments. Firstly, on the timing, I mean, yes, I do agree with Councillor Lovett that I think going for 10 would be too early. I think the main customer base in this area is going to be students who we know are quite nocturnal, and therefore, and also, hopefully, are more likely to turn up on a bike or by foot. And so, you know, if this business is going to be a thriving business, we do want it to succeed with customers who will walk and cycle. I think it's absolutely crazy that on a road that is really busy, very different to Terrace Street because it's a cut through, and used a lot by cyclists going to UEA, probably one of the main roads for cyclists to come in and out of the city. I can't believe that there's this idea that cars would reverse onto it. That just wouldn't be allowed. I can't see in any situation. I know we're not highways. I don't know, and I can't really get a sense of the size of the area, but if I wondered whether white lines indicating where people can park might mean that it would then allow some turning so people can go out forwards. Human beings follow what they can follow, they follow their desired paths, and if they can find a way to drive over curbs in any direction, that just won't stop them. So we must make sure that there are physical barriers to stop doing what we don't want them to do. And if we want them to come out forwards, then again, some physical thing, even if it's a white line showing where you can park, that might facilitate that. So I know we're not highways, but if there are conditions that we can impose, I think we should, because no way can we have people reversing and running over pavements.
Councillor Peake.
My concern is, I know you hear it quite well. My concern is that this takeaway, you might have 1 or 2 extra cars going there, and if you notice by the fence there, by the pavement, that's the way you come out, visibility, if they're looking along the pavement to reversing, they cannot see anybody walking down the pavement, anybody on bikes or push chairs, and I've got a real concern about people coming out of there, and you know, pedestrians, so I can't really vote for it, I'm afraid.
Okay, Councillor Lowick, then we'll move to the bill.
Yeah, Councillor Young has just reminded me that we do have, county councillors have a members' budget of, I think it's 11,000 this year, and they often use them for small things like putting in seating or bollards. Now, wouldn't it be nice if the county councillor for this area decided to use some bollards along here and to you know, try and prevent some of that the egress off the parking there over the pavement. It was just a thought, but as I say, county councillors do have 11,000 a year to use on small improvements, and they can be helpful. But you'd have to look carefully at this area and see where it can actually improve it.
Okay, I think we've got another quick point. Councillor Sands.
Yeah, just one quick point on county council allowances. They can be used for 3 minor road improvements, such as double yellow lines and other sorts of things. So that's just something worth keeping in mind.
Okay, we'll move to the vote now. The recommendation is to approve. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show.
Chair, it is a recorded vote, and those voting in favour are Councillors Driver, Councillor Mike Sands, Councillor Carlow.
All those against, please show.
Those members voting against are Councillor Sue Sands.
And those abstentions.
Those members abstaining
Yeah.
are Councillors Champion, Councillors Graham, Councillors Davis, Councillor Peake, Councillor Lubbock, Councillor Stookley and Councillor Young.
So the vote being 3-1 in favour, that's been approved. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Hay Hill. I understand Lee's not here. I think David's taken us through the report. Cheers.
So with this one, Chair, we've got, that's going to be a written statement which I'm just going to read out on behalf, but you've also got a copy of it.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Mary and Matt will speak, and
Yeah.
then can have up to 6 minutes.
Okay.
I've circulated it.
Yeah, we all got that.
You could probably refer to Thank you for yesterday for coming back so quick.
You alright, Dave?
Thank you, Chair. The application that's at item 4B is for the demolition of the homage to Thomas Brown sculpture from Hay Hill and its removal to secure storage. Just to reassure everybody that the title does not imply that the sculptures themselves will be destroyed, but they will simply be removed from the site. Okay, the Red Line site is probably fairly familiar to most councillors. It's that part of Hay Hill on the St Peter Mancroft side of the square, and the structures, the sculptures in question are within the Red Line area here. The statue to Sir Thomas Browne, which is a Grade 2 listed structure, is currently in this location here. That's not the subject of this particular application. That is a listed structure and was subject to a separate application for its relocation, which has already been approved. And the statue will be moved to this position here. This shows the proposed remodelling of the square, which the works for which do not require planning permission. They can be carried out under permitted development rights by the City Council. However, as of March 2021, the removal of unlisted sculptures which are commemorate an individual was previously permitted development, and then as of March 2021 that was excluded from permitted development and required planning permission. Again, a scene with which most councillors will be familiar. The statue of Sir Thomas Browne is in the background here, St Peter Mancroft here, obviously next here. The sculptures are this assemblage here. It consists of a number of different pieces, all of which are the subject of this application and all of which would be removed. View from the top of the steps looking down across the square, just outside McDonald's, looking back across the sculptures, and again they are in this location here. And a close up. The main issues to be reviewed as part of this application are the principle of removing the sculptures, the impact upon the built environment in terms of heritage, impact on designated and non-designated heritage assets, and the impact upon the setting of the area, which kind of is a crossover between heritage and design. And then also comments about trees which have been made, which are kind of more pertinent to the kind of wider redevelopment proposals for Hay Hill, rather than the removal of the statues themselves. There are a number of objections being raised. The points raised in those representations are covered in the committee report. At pages 34 to 35, 36 and top of page 37. So I won't go into those in detail, and the assessment of those issues as far as they relate to planning is set out in the body of the report. The conclusion of our assessment is that subject to suitable conditions which are set out on page 41 of the report. Those conditions should include standard time limit, development in accordance with approved plans. Details of future storage of the sculpture should be submitted, and details of heritage interpretation should also be submitted, and tree protection measures put in place during removal of the sculptures, and where necessary, details of arboricultural supervision within root protection areas. Subject to those conditions, the recommendation is to approve the application. There is an updates report to committee, which the reason for referring the application to committee was because of objections, plus the application was called in by Councillor Price. Yeah, most of the other points
raised have already been covered in the report. There has also been a brochure submitted, which I have on the display. In the event, I think one of the speakers may want to refer to it. I think that has also been. Okay.
Nobody asked for it.
All right, okay. So yes, as I say, the recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions.
Thank you, David. We have got some speakers, but we have got a statement by one person, member of the public, which will be read out first. Who's run over to attend us, Chris Mardell. David, you can read that. Thank you.
The comments that Mr. Mardell has raised are in relation to paragraph numbers in the report. So paragraph 7.
Members ought to have a copy of it.
Members also have a copy of the report. Paragraph 7, the proposal is now for the demolition stroke removal of the homage to Thomas Brown sculpture into secure storage. Mr. Mardell asks that the secure storage should be defined now. Please add a condition in respect to the location of the proposed storage site, the removal methodology, transport method and the necessary measures to protect the pieces from harm in their secure storage. Next reference is to paragraph 8, which I won't read out in full, but the comment on that is please replace due course to read within 6 months of the date of this approval. That is in relation to proposals for relocation of the sculptures. Paragraph 24, Mardell's comment is that when the homage statues are recited to a new home in the city, they should be celebrated in some form to explain their layout, significance and history. With reference to paragraphs 25 and 26 of the report, Mr. Mardell comments, we would like to, i.e. the NCAS, Norfolk Contemporary Art Society, we would like to actively contribute to further discussion on alternative locations and options for heritage interpretation on Hay Hill to mark the former presence of the sculptures. With regard to paragraph 26 of the officer report, Mr. Mardell comments that long-term storage suggests a period greater than 6 months. A period of 6 months should be the condition. And in relation to paragraph 31 of the officer report, Mr. Mardell comments that the connection between the statue and the homage pieces could be strong. An interpretation provided at both Hay Hill and at the new site of the homage sculptures could provide enhancement to an understanding of the significance of the statue, i.e. the statue of Thomas Brown, and the homage sculptures. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We do have another speaker. It's Marion Catland. If you come to the front, thank you.
Put the timer on because I'm not very good at judging time to speak. Oh, sorry. So okay.
And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a bit short. Okay, so some of you will recognise me from around town. I used to work for the City Hall as a cultural development officer, and as such I was the project manager responsible for getting the sculptures there in the first place. I know pretty much chapter and verse what was behind the thinking, the commissioning of the sculptures, why they were there, the intention, the artist's intention. I'm aware that they're often kind of misunderstood. They are one artwork in total. They're not 22 scattered pieces. They're one artwork, and they're arranged on a grid that relates to Thomas Brown. So everything about the sculptures, the artwork there relates to Hay Hill and Thomas Brown, who lived where Pret a Manger is and was buried in the church there. They were installed at a time when it was very volatile money-wise, and they were never interpreted properly because the last £20,000 that was ring-fenced to do that was in fact swept into a big budget hole that we had at the council at the time. So they were never properly interpreted, but they nevertheless took their place without much noise in the city, and they've been used as they were intended to be used ever since. They're not primarily a visual artwork. They were there as a living room for the city, a sort of salon, as the French artists that created them made for somewhere to sit. Now, I can see the issues that are, I mean, I'm rushing through this a little bit, I must say, but I can see the issues. I would like to see Hay Hill improved. There was never money to do that at the time. We were aware that they weren't in an ideal setting, even though they have provided the function that they were made and designed for. But I think that what I would like to ask for is that there's a condition applied if indeed I'm objecting to them being removed, because I think what should happen is the work should be done and they should be accommodated back into that space, which would address some of the things that people don't like about them. There are many people that do really like them. I'm not going to go into that now. What I would like to do is apply a condition that the £20,000 is ring fenced to put a permanent representation of the work of that particular work. I've obtained a quote and some indicative. I've got some visuals here of indicative ways that could be done by engraving into the paving or whatever the surface is going to be, that will not impede the other ambitions for the space, which is to use it more for events and other things. It might have to be adjusted a little to fit the space, which I think there's more area being taken up by steps than existing. So that's, I could talk to any member here privately about the reasons why I think it shouldn't be moved, but there isn't time to do that now. And I would really like to ask for that condition to be made very explicit, that there's a budget of at least £20,000 made to reinforce the message about Thomas Brown, who is a very undervalued asset for the city, and to commemorate the artwork that is now part of the story. And the Poirier work and Thomas Brown should be a much greater part of the story of Norwich.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off there. Had a good sort of 4.5 minutes. So. Thank you. Dave, you just want to come back on that condition. I don't think we can actually put that through because it's... Because that'd be
we've got Ben to speak now.
That'd be a council thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'll come back on that.
You're going to come back on that? Okay, Ben, if you'd like to come up. And you have 6 minutes, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak at committee in support of this planning application as a planning applicant. My team is designing and managing a project to make Hay Hill work better and become a source of pride for the city. Hay Hill is a space in need of investment. The complicated steps frustrate movement across the space, lighting is poor, antisocial and criminal activity blights the area, there's not enough seating, there are no plants at ground level contributing colour and biodiversity. The joyful play of water is now absent. Events cannot happen because there's no clear surface. And the listed statue of Sir Thomas Brown isn't as prominent as he deserves to be. When we consulted the public about the condition of the site and our initial ideas, 79% of the respondents agreed with our aims. 46% said they did not find it easy to move through the space. The most common reason given for this was the placement of the homage sculptures. 60% of our consultees supported moving the sculptures to a different location. We have a precious opportunity to solve these problems using £3.2 million of government money we've secured for the purpose. The design process has been very complicated, resolving the levels, working with underground utilities, protecting trees and ensuring it can all be built within the time allowed by our paymasters in government has been hard. The scheme we have designed is ready to be built. It cannot be changed at this stage in any fundamental way. It will create a beautiful place. There will be simple, clear steps and ramp services that can be negotiated by people with disabilities. We've met their representatives with a tactile model and it was enthusiastically welcomed. we've taken our duties under the Equalities Act 2010 seriously. It's not just people with sensory mobility impairments who will benefit. Everyone will be able to walk more freely between the points of entry and exit without skirting around the edge of the space. But we expect people will want to linger and sit on the generous new seating, listen to the play of the water cascade, and enjoy the colour and aroma of the planting and observe cultural events. Thomas Brown will preside over the scene on his plinth from a more prominent position. But none of these things can happen if the collection of homage sculptures remain. We need urgently to remove them from Hay Hill or the project will not happen. Their retention on Hay Hill is clearly impossible during the construction project, which is scheduled to begin imminently. This is why we need your approval today to remove them. Bringing them back to Hay Hill is not compatible with our design. They would congest the space even worse than they do now by creating obstacles, frustrating walking routes, and preventing events happening. They're no longer needed as informal seating, because the new seating will be plentiful, warm and comfortable, made from wood with armrests. The new seating will be used by people who are physically unable to sit on cold, hard stone of the homage sculptures. I'm not one of those many people who say the sculptures are ugly, confusing or irrelevant. I worked with Marion on the project to install them 15 years ago. We agree with Thomas Brown's champions that he is a figure of huge importance. We're fortunate he lived in Norwich and he deserves to be celebrated. This is why we're making his statue the focus of the new design. This project presents an opportunity to move the homage sculptures to a new location so it can be celebrated properly in two places rather than too intensively in just one. We've not yet decided the best place for homage to go, but we are working on it and have a budget for it. We've been talking to Marion and others who champion Thomas Brown and the homage sculptures. We plan to continue this dialogue about the new site and providing good interpretation on Hay Hill. Importantly, we've been in correspondence with the sculptors, Anne and Patrick Poirier. They have told us that they think a more suitable space can be found to host the sculptures than Hay Hill. The description of this application uses unfortunate legal planning term demolition. In fact, if you do grant permission, the sculpture will be carefully removed from the space by professional and experienced conservators who we've already appointed. They will be taken to their workshop and cleaned and temporarily stored. We're poised to reshape Hay Hill for the benefit of people of Norwich and visitors to our fine city. This cannot happen unless the application before you is approved, and I urge you to support it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, man. David, do you want to come back on any queries which were brought up by the two speakers?
I do. I think what's been said by both speakers, by both the applicant and the representative from the Thomas Brown Society, illustrates that we as planners and the Planning Applications Committee have a part to play in the redevelopment of Hay Hill. But we're not granting planning permission for the redevelopment of Hay Hill. The development that is, the application that is before you is for the removal of the, I call it the homage sculptures. That is what you are determining. There are conditions proposed that ensure the protection of the sculptures in anticipation of them being relocated elsewhere. You're not being asked to determine an application for them being relocated elsewhere. That's going to take time. I mean, the application before you did originally include a proposal to relocate them to Elm Hill. That created its own set of problems, and that was removed from the description of the development. So you're simply looking at something that became a requirement of planning back in March 2021 in a kind of different context when statues, unlisted statues were being removed and it was a response to, it was to try and give some control over the historic relevance of those statues. So whilst this application, the removal of the homage collection will help facilitate the redevelopment of Hay Hill, that's not your primary concern at this point. And I say that not to denigrate or put down the proposals. We're not passing judgment on them as part of this application. They're not material. The pros and cons of those proposals should not form part of your consideration. You're purely looking at the removal of the homage sculptures. Going back to the request for a condition about interpretation, we can't ask for a specific sum of money to be ring-fenced within the council. We can't ask for that £20,000 as the Planning Applications Committee. What we can do, and that was for interpretation, what we can do is we can attach a condition, which we are proposing to do at condition 4, where details of the heritage interpretation, not the relocation of the homage, but something to reflect the fact that it was there, to make it, as was said, part of the story of the redevelopment and the continued development and evolution of this part of Norwich as an important space. So I think the points raised by the speaker were about heritage interpretation. I covered that condition 4. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Lovick.
When are we likely to get an application in that we look at for the redevelopment of the Hay Hill?
As I said in the presentation, we won't get an application in. It's permitted development under the
whole lot.
The whole lot, yeah. The two bits that need consent are the relocation of the Thomas More statue itself, because it's a listed structure. That's already been granted. And then the other bit that needs planning permission is the removal of the homage, and that's the one before you today. The wider redevelopment of Hay Hill does not require planning permission.
But we have heard from the speaker how important it is, that redevelopment, that this goes.
Well, that's why I'm suggesting that the weight that you attach to that cannot be that great. You don't have control over it. You can't secure that redevelopment as part of this application. You are solely looking at the removal of this homage, of the sculptures, as part of this application.
Question, Denise? Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yes, presumably if the committee today doesn't grant permission for the removal, then the redevelopment can't go ahead. That's one question. My other question is about the red line plan, whether all the pieces of homage are included within that. I went to have a look, and there's a seat called, I think, Nemesis, which seems to be some distance away from the other parts of the homage, so I wondered if that's included in the red.
The answer to your first point is, if this Planning Applications Committee doesn't grant consent for the removal, you're correct, the redevelopment of Hay Hill cannot go ahead. The weight that you choose to give to that is a matter for the decision maker. It's not something that we've actually weight to in coming to our recommendation. Your point about the red line is, yes, I think all the elements of the sculpture are captured within that red line.
That's the ground.
A time limit and a budget and consultation with the Contemporary Art Society. I'm surprised not to see the Thomas Brown Society there as well, but I know things we can do.
They are things that we can do, but they're kind of related to the relocation of the sculpture, and that will form part of another planning application. Where the sculpture goes is yet to be determined. it is highly likely that will require planning permission in its own right, and subject to triggering calling, etc. That may come back to this committee, but the negotiations, again, I can come back to the point that the application that's before you today is simply for the removal of the structures. The discussion about where they then go is a matter that needs to take place outside of the planning process, and it's already kind of ongoing. There are again, just for context, there are discussions already kind of ongoing about potential sites. And indeed, there were discussions that went on about the Elm Hill site. So it's not like it's just kind of going on in isolation, and the team leading the project is just kind of coming up with ideas and laying planning applications, and there is consultation on going.
Okay, the recommendations. Please.
Yeah, sorry, just come back, David, on my earlier question. If permission today, if the committee today, if permission to remove these college pieces, then what happens next? What does the council? Can the council appeal, or what does it do? Given it's the applicant.
The council as applicant has the same rights as anybody else.
Yeah.
So yes, the council could appeal, and they have the same rights as anybody else. If your question is about what happens to the scheme for Hay Hill, then as Ben Webster has highlighted, it may not go ahead. In fact, it wouldn't go ahead, because it can't be done without the removal of the damaged structures.
Yeah, I was just asking about the process. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the recommendation is to approve. I'll remove that. Little seconder. Thank you, Councillor Sands. Any discussions? Councillor Lubbock and Councillor Stootley.
Well, I'm very sorry that we're in this situation, really. And I'm going to make a political point, but we're just chasing a town's fund of 3.2 million that we wouldn't be chasing. We wouldn't be in this situation if we weren't chasing that money. And one has to question whether or not there will be improvements to Hay Hill. We hear that it's dark and there's antisocial behaviour and there's not much seating. I haven't got any idea whether the plans for redevelopment will address those things. So I look at it now and say, yes, I think that those things are true, but you could put more seating there. You could perhaps put more lighting there, and there are things that could be done could be done while these important sculptures remain in place and remain near the St Thomas Brown statue. So I really am unhappy that we're in this situation, and also that perhaps there should have been that interpretation, so that when people were asked about, do you want these statues removed, more people would have had that understanding of why those statues needed to be in that place. And I think so often we just don't see that interpretation. We don't even see the name of the person who made a sculpture. Where is it? It's often not there. And so our appreciation of sculpture is decreased by the lack of interpretation. So it was a very grave mistake not having the interpretation there from the beginning. When we go out to consultation now, no wonder 70% or so say, I don't mind if you remove it, I don't understand it, I don't care where it goes. Because they don't understand it. And that was our fault, because we put these things there and didn't have the money for the interpretation. We should have found it over the last 15 years. But I still come back to, I'm just deciding to put these things in storage. And that saddens me. If I'd got a plan to put them somewhere else, that would be helpful. If I've got a plan to compare with what's going to go there, that would be helpful. But all I've got is the opportunity to put them into storage. And I'm really not happy about that. And as I say, when I hear that this will improve, I have my doubts, because there used to be a water feature here when I first came to Norwich. And what happened? People put rubbish in the water. They put bubbles in the
Very liquid.
and so, there were all sorts of problems with antisocial behaviour, but we didn't address them. We just took the water feature away. At the heart of this, you've got to change people's attitude to public space. We also do have public open space for activity. There's in the Fall, there's in Chapel Gardens. There's Castle Green. We manage at the moment. One wonders how much this will be used for public theatre or music or whatever when we've got other spaces. And I just sum up by saying I'm deeply unhappy just having this one action of removal or nothing.
Councillor Stewie?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think undoubtedly the new scheme will be a very big improvement on what's there now. I think it's a very good, well-designed scheme, and I think it'll have major benefits for the area. The trouble with this scheme, or this application, is that it's incomplete because it is just for removal, and it's incomplete because we don't know where or when the units are going to be relocated, and we really need to have a spot that enhances their impact on the area, and also the statues. So I certainly don't want to stand in the way of the new project, because I think it's superb. But because of the issues over where they're going to go and how long it may take, I won't be able to vote in favour, so I'm going to abstain. I really do think that we should have had something in place to where they're going to go. So my abstention is on heritage grounds. Thank you.
David?
Just to kind of pick up on some of the points that have been expressed. I mean, I understand where members are coming from, but obviously the applicant is the council, the developer is the council. So you as members outside this regulatory function have the opportunity to kind of get involved in that process as well. It's not like we are giving away all our control over this process by making a decision on this particular application. So we do have, there are statutes. Speaking as Norwich City Council, there are statutes. So we do have, as a council, ultimate say over where they go.
Councillor Graham?
Thank you. I find it quite hard to believe that we can't integrate the statues with the new scheme. Although the fact that it's seen as one piece of artwork rather than lots of small pieces kind of goes some way to explaining it. But I wonder if someone could explain, you've said you've looked at that, you've tried to integrate it and found that it's not possible. Could you explain that?
I can't, because I haven't done that. That's the scheme has been designed separately. So the Ben Webster has led that team, and the proposal that he's come up with. I mean, again, it's not been created in a vacuum. It's been created through consultation process. But the scheme that comes afterwards does not allow for this particular collection or artwork to be reinstalled with the same relationship to the Thomas Brown statue that it does now. So again, that's kind of something that kind of goes beyond the development for which the Commission is being sought at this point in time.
I was at the consultation with the 3D model, and it was really impressive, and it was run by people with various kinds of disabilities, and they were really happy with it, with the consultation and the interpretation. And I don't want to stand in the way of that. I just hope that the process of reciting it will be a positive one, and it sounds like it will.
Councillor Stones.
Thank you, Chair. I fully understand the and sort of partially agree with the comments that Councillor Lubbock made. One of the things we do need to understand about cities is they're not static places. Things change constantly. I mean, if we go to any part of any city anywhere and look back over time, there have been enormous changes. I do think that the area is tired and in need of upgrading and remodelling, and I dare say in a number of years' time people will look at the area again and say, well, it's now looking tired and in need of remodelling and upgrading. I do remember when those items first arrived, we hadn't been in Norwich very, very long at all, and there was a lot of controversy in the local press, and some people loved them, some people hated them, but I do think it's time to make a change. We're not removing the sculptures permanently, and I do look forward to a time in the future when it comes back to planning and we're discussing an application for the replacement of the sculptures in a new location. And I think overall, we don't like to see anything removed, torn down or whatever, but they're not being destroyed, they're simply being removed. As being already explained, they're going to be cleaned and restored, and at some future date we'll have a new application and we'll be discussing the new placement for these sculptures. And in the meantime, I think we'll have a square that currently looks tired, dated, upgraded and turned into a more inviting and user-friendly place for the people of Norwich.
Councillor Champion.
I feel it would be amiss to, it's International Women's Week, the person we're discussing commemorating was directly involved with witch trials, which then involved and influenced the Salem witch trials. And I'm always curious if there was interpretation, would the women who were killed in these instances be put into the interpretation? I sometimes feel that even though we should do warts and all history, that we still sometimes celebrate some people and omit some parts of history. And so I would encourage, just for the record, that if in the future there is interpretation of this artwork, that the entirety of history is covered, warts and all, and that all the people who maybe didn't get commemorated or wouldn't have been are.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Champion. That's not what I was going to say. But I don't know many people who've ever understood this sculpture. And I think perhaps because it was never really explained. I do want to see this redeveloped, and I do want to see this more accessible for people with disabilities. I am disappointed that we don't know where it's going to go at the moment, and that it is going to end up in storage. And I honestly came in here not knowing how I was going to vote, but I think to make this space actually usable and more accessible for everyone, I agree that they should be found a new home. So I will be voting in favour.
Councillor Young.
I think I came in here thinking I was going to argue really strongly that they should be incorporated into the new design and stay. They don't look that big, they're quite small. But also I'm really for there being greater biodiversity in the side of the city. Any more green, any more floral that we can put into the side of the city is really important. And I've started to feel that if we try and incorporate those sculptures into that design, maybe there'll just be too much going on. It looks like it is a great design. I'm so pleased to hear how different members of the community have responded to it. And I do feel that the sculptures are so precious. We have so little modern art in the city, and we need it. We need it to be presented properly. And that's coming out from what Councillor Davis or Councillor Champion has said as well. We need there to be really good, the way it's presented. There needs to be space around it so people can really see what it is. And therefore, I've started to feel, fighting to incorporate it may sadly not do these lovely sculptures justice. So we really do need to make sure they have a lovely new site with the correct signage and really make it special. I'd also just like to add for the record that 60% of people did recommend they were removed, but we just heard that loads of people didn't really understand what they were, and I'm always very sceptical about consultations and biased wording and leading questions, which may have been in there, I don't know, but there were still an awful lot of people that very much valued these sculptures and want them to remain. So let's hope we find a really good site for them. Let's make it a priority.
Okay, I'm going to vote in favour of taking these away. I've worked in Next and Topshop. I've drunk in the George and Dragon, which used to be there on a corner. The square has changed over the years. Thomas had a cone on top of his head for a couple of weeks, so people do put things in there. They put squeezy fairy liquid into the water that went all over down Gentleman's Walk, and I'm a bit worried about the water feature going in again this time. But what they've actually done and where they're going to put Thomas looks actually really good. And I was about when these came, and I just don't like them, I'm afraid. I'm one of those people who didn't get it. And I still don't get it, and they've been there for 15 years. And I don't know anyone who I know could tell me what they are, what they're supposed to be doing there, and what vision that was there to do. And I voted against this 15 years ago when that was first brought up. So it would be a shame if they disappeared off the face of the earth. Let's put them somewhere where it might be appreciated, like the UEA where the other statues are, or something like that, round by the lake or something like that. And let's show them off in a different way, because I don't think it makes any difference if you show them off in front of Thomas or not. Tell the truth, I think they can stand out on their own and probably would do, because the statue's been there a hell of a lot longer than these 14 or 15 statues. So I will be voting to bring them out. Councillor Levitt, and then Councillor Cullen.
Yes, I come back to the idea that you could improve this without 3.2 million to do it. You do need more vegetation there, you do need more seating, and if you need to deal with it looks pretty flat to me, but obviously, there are some hindrances to people with mobility problems, but I don't know where they exist, but I still feel that every sort of 12, 15 years you go back and spend 3.2 million. It's not sustainable the way we do things in this country. That's perfectly flat. Yeah, all that will come up, just like St Stephen's. We spent 6 million on St Stephen's and people still don't have bus shelters. I hate this grabbing at what the government give you. Oh, you've got to apply for this and apply for that, you don't have to do anything. It's just not a sustainable way of running our city. And I do think, does it really need to all come up and be changed? I think it could be improved for a lot less money. We haven't got any money, but I still feel that it's not 3.2 million. I don't know the details of the new scheme. I haven't been engaged with it, I'm afraid. I don't know how others have been engaged, and I haven't.
Well, that's been printed in the Evening News.
Oh, the Evening News! Oh, I should have known, shouldn't I? But, as councillors, we've heard from David Parkin that we should become engaged with it. Well, I'm not going to buy the Evening News just to become engaged with it. I want something a bit more than that. And as for consultation, well, we had a consultation where 91% of the people were against something, and it still went ahead recently. So I'm still a bit unhappy about this, and I know it's on the principle of having to bid to government for money all the time. But I sometimes wonder whether those bids are really sustainable, and whether we wouldn't be better off just dealing with it as and when we can. Making it greener, making more seats, dealing with the hindrances to mobility, and let's be satisfied with that rather than tear it all up, start again, and do the same in a few years' time. So I'm either going to abstain or I'm going to vote against it, but I don't think we want to support this.
Okay, I'll just advise you that 300 odd million for St Stephen's Road and the bus shelters or six months. It's county council, nothing to do with the city. So, Councillor Carlo, Councillor
The
Carlo,
principle is the same. You bid the money from the
Councillor
government.
Councillor
It's not
Lovett.
really what you want to be doing.
Councillor Carlo.
I'm sympathetic to Judith's point about planning. I mean, the Bowthorpe Road scheme is an example of bad planning over the years. And I think that this scheme is another one, that we didn't do the proper planning in 2005 when we ought to have remodelled Hay Hill.
We did.
Well, there was a lot of controversy over that scheme, and the council contributed £30,000 and the public weren't happy about it. There was no interpretation, and it's as it is at the moment, it's very dreary. And I think the new Hay Hill scheme will be great. As Councillor Young says, if it'll introduce biodiversity into a bleak area. But the trouble is, I also agree with objectors that removing the statuary will break the link between Thomas Brown's sculpture and the homage pieces. And finding a new location is going to be really quite difficult. But obviously, I agree that they will have to be moved, otherwise the new scheme can't go ahead. But I just wish we would do planning in the city in a better way at times. That we don't scrub out and start again. And having spent a lot of money, and I mean, the public did express its views very strongly at the time, and the council didn't listen. But I will vote for removal of the statue.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll move to the vote now. Unless anyone's got anything else, Councillor Stupey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to inform councillors that the process for the new scheme has been really carefully followed, and it's been a long process. And I was lucky enough to have early briefings, and the scheme itself has transitioned from an original layout to what we've got, and it was open to councillors to input into the consultation as well as the public. So I don't know how people missed it. It's actually really very, very good. The only issue I have with this specific application, which is what we really should be talking about, is the fact that we don't know where they're going. I'm concerned that they may end up in long-term storage because of the difficulty in finding that place. I think we should do some more work on finding out place and getting these into a suitable location. And until that happens, I'm not able to. So I absolutely do want them to be moved so that the scheme can go ahead. Just on this application specifically, without everything else involved, I have to abstain. Thank you.
Okay, it's been recommended to approve. It's been forwarded and seconded. We'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show.
It is a recorded vote again, so bear with me while I call out your hands. I'll call Councillor Young first in case I miss it. Thank you. Councillor Driver, Councillor Mike Sands, Councillor Carlo, Councillor Champion, Councillor Graham, Councillor Davis, Councillor Susans, Councillor Peake.
Thank you. All those against, please show.
The members voting against, Councillor Lubbock.
And abstaining.
Councillor Stutely is abstaining.
Thank you. Is that 9-1?
Carried.
And that's been carried. Thank you very much. I think we had just go a break for 10 minutes if possible. Thank you.
Are you okay?
Okay, thank you for having that short break. We move on to our last application of the day, which is 36 Norwich Drive. I'll ask our case officer to take us through there. Amanda, will you take us through?
It's going to be me.
That's going to be you as well, David. You're having a good day today, I believe.
Yeah.
Go on then.
Thank you. This application, item 4C, is at 36 Norwich Drive, which is a two-storey semi-detached house in the southwest of the city. And the application proposes the construction of a single-storey side and rear extension to the property. Red line the site is in the middle of this diagram, so it's the southern part of a pair of semis. It has, as you'll see in some of the further plans, it has a garage which is attached by a passageway at the moment. Plan. In terms of what's there at the moment, main house sits here with an existing conservatory at the back. The garage with a room at the back is to the side. It sits along, as you can see here, it sits alongside the shared boundary with the adjoining property here. There's a covered passageway between the two properties, so it's not there's no access between the garage and the house. Hallway in, kitchen, lounge and dining room on the ground floor, stairs up to 3 beds on the first floor with bath and toilet. The proposal is to take down the existing garage and to extend over the footprint of the conservatory, which is here, but it's extending an L shape wrapping around the existing property. Notice that the single-storey extension moves away from the boundary. You can see here the faded grey line is where the current garage is, and there's the proposed extension moves that away from the shared boundary. So what you've got internally, ground floor hall, lounge, kitchen, dining area with a study, got downstairs shower room, and then you've got a bedroom downstairs with an ensuite. And then upstairs to 2 more bedrooms with ensuite to bedroom 1 and a shower room, separate shower room here. Sorry, excuse me. Moving on to photographs. View from the front. This is the application property. So this shows the it's a pair of semis, and then again from the front. So rising up, existing driveway to the garage. You can see that the adjoining property has a lean-to style extension, which is very close to the boundary. And then at the back, this is the existing conservatory. So this area, this property here, is the other pair in the semis. The extension would come out along the same line as the conservatory, but extend in this direction, wrapping around the back of the property. This photograph just shows the relationship with the back garden, so it's a fairly substantial plot in terms of the ability to accommodate the physical scale of the extension. So I'll just go back to proposal. So just remind you, it's the it will have a lean-to style roof wrapping around the existing footprint of the property. So the issues for consideration and that are addressed in the report from planning point of view are the design of the proposed extension. and the impact of that extension upon the amenity of adjacent neighbours. The assessment of those issues is contained in the officer report, and the application is referred to committee at the request of Councillor Lubbock. As a householder, even though there are objections, it wouldn't have been referred otherwise. But it is before you. The recommendation is to approve, subject to standard time limit condition and the condition that is in accordance with the approved plans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have got a couple of speakers on here. The first one is Councillor Lubbock, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the neighbours living each side of the application site, and particularly Mr and Mrs Brinded, whose home adjoins it. The significant increase in the size of this semi-detached property does give rise to significant impact on those neighbours. Currently, a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom and ordinary living space becomes a 4-bedroom, 4 bathrooms and increased living space. There is impact in terms of where bathrooms and kitchens are resited next to the interior party wall. There is impact when the extension has an increased roof height and causes a loss of some light into the adjoining property, and impact when pressure is placed on shared sewage facilities. All these issues do have an impact which should be acknowledged. So should the perception by neighbours that this dwelling could become a house accommodating up to 6 students or young professionals living independently, increasing the activity of possible noise, the possibility of another unkempt garden and bins often left out on the street. And then there is parking. If the house has 5 students or young professionals, there may be 2 or 3 cars which will be parked on the road, or half on and half off the road, which increases the likelihood of the potential for blocking the street for emergency vehicles and the currently regular bus service. This can result in the bus service being withdrawn, leaving the community without easy access to public transport. This is not an uncommon situation in this area, but if you don't live in such an area or represent such an area, this detrimental impact of houses changing from public houses to student lets will pass you by and not be seen as an important loss of community to the area. But I think it's vital that this democratic change is at least acknowledged. While some of these issues are dealt with in the report as not being significant, I wanted to express the frustration of neighbours and the many ways that neighbours are being impacted by development of this type. I would, however, take issue with the report where the report says the site can be comfortably accommodated at least 2 parking spaces available on the driveway. They would have to be cars of a very small type, and knowing the ease of parking on the road, it's more than likely that this type of development will increase the number of cars parked on the road and all the problems that brings. I ask you to take these issues into consideration when deciding this application today. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more speaker. Jude, if you're allowed to stay till the other speaker's finished, and then you have to leave afterwards, it's up to you. We have Susan Blendell. Brendan, sorry about that. And you have 3 minutes as well. Thank you.
In relation to the planning application for 36 Norwich Drive, this is aimed at a number of individuals living independently of each other in the same house, although we understand this is not the case. We comment as follows: main issue 1 design, point 24. We object to the notion the proposal will not cause any significant impact to the residential amenity of number 38. We cannot see how increasing the size of an adjoining semi-detached property by such an extent of its original design, increasing the number of bathrooms from 1 to 4, and increasing the number of living spaces cannot cause significant impact on number 38. Does a C3 dwelling really need 4 bathrooms? Original layouts for these houses had kitchens and bathrooms on external walls. We note the kitchen and an ensuite to be situated within the master bedroom will now be placed adjacent to a shared party wall. This will impact on the residential amenity of number 38, not taking into consideration risk of damp, air extraction and noise abuse. Another consideration is the pressure 3 more bathrooms were put on a shared sewage facility, the joint responsibility of houses 36 to 46. It appears from plans the maximum height of the extension roof, once pitched, will increase by 30% from the current 2.7 to 3.5 metres high. Coupled with a mature oak tree in the garden 5 to 6 metres high, this will further reduce the already poor natural light into the living area of number 38. Point 29, parking. It would be inaccurate to suggest by removing the garage from number 36 to facilitate the fourth bedroom, the drive could still accommodate at least 2 vehicles. A dwelling developed as such could add more cars, narrower in the future to a road already narrowed by parked vehicles, at times inappropriately, a road on a bus route and giving access to South Park Estate and Sharp Walk shops. This brings additional traffic to the area. There are already impacts for service vehicles, for example, refuse lorries, delivery vans and contractors, and more importantly, emergency services. Pedestrians have to negotiate vehicles parked half on the pavement, driving onto the pavement to pass, and poor line of vision when crossing. In summary, we oppose the suggestion our dwelling will not be impacted by approval of this application. The application is considerably changing the dynamic of number 36 in size and potential future use. The noise generating areas of the house, namely bathroom and kitchen, are being moved to areas for which they were not originally designed. The potential is there to relabel rooms to facilitate additional bedrooms in future. This is a concern for us and future residents of number 38 Norwich Drive. The houses in Norwich Drive are family homes, close to good schools and outdoor spaces where families can spend quality time without the need for travel. Amenities are being lost when houses are adapted in such a way that their only realistic future use would be the student or professional let marketplace, already becoming oversubscribed, forcing further greenfield developments to support those displaced needs. The whole demographic of the area is changing due to the ingress of this market, and the number of applications which may not impact now, but are highly likely to in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, we've got the applicant here, Robert Brown, but you just observing? Is he here?
He's just observing.
Yep, okay, thank you. So we move on to questions to the planning officer. Any questions, anyone? Quite a few. Councillor Champion, Councillor Davis, Councillor Stootley. Thank you.
So one of the points which has been raised is about the increase in bathrooms and how the sewage, the impacts how that will have on the collective sewage of the 2 properties in combination. I might have overlooked that in the application, or is that something which we need to be bearing in mind? What's the relevance of that?
I think rather than looking at the number of bathrooms, you should be looking at the number of bedrooms, and that this is the application that's before you is still for an extension to a domestic property, and albeit, and it adds 1 additional bedroom to that property. I mean, you could put an ensuite in every single bedroom. It's the number of people in the property that actually dictates the impact upon the sewage system, not the number of toilets. So this results in the increase in one bedroom, and that's not felt to have a material impact upon the sewage system.
Okay. Councillor Davis?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to understand a bit more about the resiting of the kitchen and ensuite into the internal wall. Will that have any effects on the adjoining property in terms of drainage or damp?
Not from a planning point of view, because the relocation, I mean, taking the ensuite upstairs, that's an internal change that could be made now without the benefit of planning permission, as could indeed the relocation of the kitchen. I mean, at the moment the kitchen is in this location, There will be nothing to prevent them opening up, say, I don't know, taking down these walls, dividing the lounge across and having a kitchen diner with the kitchen against this wall. So they're changes that could be made without the benefit of planning permission. So whilst I understand the concerns raised, they're not material to this.
I saw that, I just wanted to double check.
Councillor Stookley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. One of the concerns here and in this area is HMOs, and clearly the objective issues concerning future uses in HMOs. At the moment, you don't need planning permission to have a HMO with 5 bedrooms. This could be 6. Would that require planning? And are we able in this committee to prevent that from happening?
You're not able to prevent the change of use from a C3 house, which this is, to a C4 small HMO, which, and I think that's stressed in the report at paragraph 46. I mean, if it was 6 or more, then it would become a sui generis large HMO, which would require planning permission in its own right. I mean, this could be being used as a small HMO now, and we would have no control over it. The addition of another bedroom to it, it's not necessary to facilitate its use as an HMO.
The layout that we've seen here, the proposed layout, would allow for a 6-bedroom HMO in the future if they wanted to plan, and because the study and lounge could be used as a 5th and 6th bedroom. So the question was, are we able in this committee to condition that so that it can be prevented in the future?
Well, that would require planning permission.
Okay, so presumably that would come back to the committee.
Well, it would require planning permission, and if it was triggered according to the committee, then yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else got any questions? Okay, the recommendation is to approve, and I'll move that. Have we got a seconder for that? Thank you. Discussion. Anyone? Councillor Davis and then Councillor Stookley.
If I was going to design a 6-bedroom HMO, it would be exactly like this. So I think that is actually what's coming in front of us today. I don't think this is a simple extension to a 3-bedroom house. This is exactly what I would do if I was going to design a 6-bedroom HMO in this layout. So to me, it looks like that is the plan for this building.
Councillor Stookley?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Davis. I mean, it does look like it could well be a large HMO in the future. Obviously, we have that protection in place. There may well be another planning committee to consider that. But as a household extension, there is no planning reason at the moment to vote against it, because I think there will be an impact on the communities. It is within the planning permission, I believe. So I will be voting in favour of this one.
Councillor Young?
With reservations.
I mainly disagree with what others have said, but I think with this number of bathrooms, particularly when there are 2 bathrooms downstairs for supposedly only 1 extra bedroom, this is not meant as a family house. And at the very least, there is definitely going to be 5 people living there. The study has got to be used as there must be a plan for it to be a bedroom, because why would there be yet another bathroom downstairs? And so the neutrality issue, do we just ignore it because it's going from a 3-person house to a 5-person house? That to me seems, I mean, every little step we do to increase a property to include more people surely is going to affect our neutrality issue. Yes, we're not looking at big developments, but the more we say yes to things like this, it just seems wrong.
David, did you want to come back to some of that?
On the neutrality point, I mean, domestic extensions, when you take the kind of average household size, don't significantly impact on the average household size. So they don't necessarily, they don't in and of themselves impact on the nutrient neutrality issue. So that's why we've been able to determine those in the past year.
Okay, no one else? Councillor Susans?
Yeah, like many others, I'm not reassured by the C3 because in my ward, C3 is quite rapidly replaced with C4, and it does make a lot of impact in the area. It does create parking issues, does create access issues with the buses unable to get through in our student multiple HMO areas, and this city continues to encourage this in areas that should be profound.
Councillor Carlo?
Yeah. Just to say, I feel generally concerned about the intensification of developments on plots, because it's led to nutrient neutrality, to biodiversity loss, to the city becoming hotter, to increased surface water flooding, and I hope that the intensification issue is going to be addressed in the development management plan roll forward. I suspect it probably won't, because it's permitted development in some cases. But yeah, just to express my concern generally.
Okay, Councillor Stooley?
Yeah, kind of a question. Isn't this actually quite close to permitted development in terms of its size? It's only a metre, half a metre or so to the side. Or is it a metre? Where it would actually, if it was a metre shorter, it would actually come in on permitted development. So in terms of overdevelopment, it probably isn't. It's a real concern for me is the HMOs.
It's the combination of the side and the rear that kind of takes it over the threshold for PD, but it's not a huge extension in and of itself. But it is over PD, so we have the ability to control it. But yeah, it's not an enormous extension.
Okay, Councillor Chairman?
In my household this morning, I had multiple teenagers and there was a lot of arguments about bathrooms. If I could have a house like this where there was enough bathrooms for everyone not to be shouting at each other first thing in the morning, I would welcome that. I do appreciate what people have said about but it is an assumption. It might be that we've got somebody here who is in my situation who's got multiple teenagers and has decided that they're going to deal with the situation and put the money to do so. The floor plan doesn't exceed, it does. We're not losing biodiversity. In fact, I would suggest actually to avoid having to build more properties, maybe we should be welcoming developments like this because actually we can allow more people to be living in the city and the developments that we already have. I mean, just to be a devil's advocate, to give a different perspective, we can't vote against this. I don't believe really within the planning regulations. I can see no reason to do so. So I will be planning to approve this, and I would just suggest that we need to be careful of assumption, because possibly there's good intent, and this is somebody who's just we don't know. I feel like a lot of unknowns and a lot of assumptions in the discussion.
Councillor Graham?
My point's been made.
Thank you. Okay, it's been recommended for approval and seconded. And we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show.
So those members in voting in favour, again a recorded vote. So that'll be, please bear with me while I call your names. Councillor Stryver, Mike Sands, Carlo, Champion, Peake, Stutley.
Those against?
Those members voting against are Sue Sands.
Abstentions?
Those members abstaining are Councillors Graham, Davis and Young. So that's carried, Chair.
So